Hello once again. I've got a question this time for Michael Yardney, and this one comes from Paul on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. Thanks for your question, Paul. And by the way, too, keep sending those questions in. We'll always have one of our experts answer them for you. And Paul asks, Michael, I've heard you talk about the concept of land banking before. What is it? Is it something that I should be considering because in the future I want to get involved in property development? Well, to answer your question, Paul, we have the man on the line, Michael Yardney. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Kevin, and thanks for the question, Paul. The concept of land banking, Kevin and Paul, came from the big developers who were storing stock for the future. So they would buy farms, they'd buy greenfield sites and put them in their land bank that in 5 or 7 years' time, they then started to subdivide and sell. It worked well for some, but it actually took a number of very big developers down over the years because the holding costs were considerably heavier than they expected, and maybe the market changed and the market turned. So it's a play that's often done by the big developers. Is it something for you, Paul, for people like me? Well, I'm currently land banking for properties, but it's not vacant land, so I'm not going to go broke. What I do is buy old houses close to their use-by date, but where there are tenants there, where there's still rent coming in areas that are improving, and one by one, I'm getting development approvals for the properties and then able to do the development. So it's definitely the sort of thing that you should consider, Paul, but all the other criteria have to come first. So you can't just land bank any property. It's got to still be an investment grade location, one that's going to keep growing in value. And if you're considering doing development, clearly the property's got to be one that you can develop. The other thing is that not every site's a development site, but how often have you driven past something, Kevin, and you've thought, gee, that property was for sale 10 years ago. If only I could have bought it then rather than have to pay what I've got to pay today. And that's what land banking...
I find myself saying that quite often, Michael.
and that's exactly the reason why it's nice to put something away now to use as part of your development bank in the future, Kevin.
Michael, I remember recently hearing some pretty bad press about land banking. What was all that about?
They were schemes run by promoters who got themselves into trouble with ASIC and with the courts, where they put joint ventures of people together and bought land in regional Australia that wasn't zoned for subdivision. Now, sure, some big developers do that. They buy rural land, it's zoned as acreage, and they wait for the council in due course to eventually rezone it so you can have smaller residential blocks. But these were never going to be zoned. They weren't on the outlook for the council for the next 10, 15 years. So people were duped to buy things, and the promoters took lots of money. Often they bought them with options. And that's another thing not to consider, because I don't think I've ever seen anybody make money buying a property with option. Any smart vendor would never sell with an option. And Kevin, you know estate agents well. Why would they ever sell anything on an option?
Never.
Never. And it's for that reason then, but this is what these schemes did. They took options. The scheme promoters, the spruikers, took their commissions, and people were left with dud land, which was often marshland. So I'm suggesting something different. Find an old house in a good street. That's an old time-tested strategy. Buy the worst house in the best street, and one day you could develop it, but the land keeps going up in value anyway, Kevin.
There you go, Michael. Thank you very much. And there you go, Paul. That's the answer to your question from Michael Yardney. Hey, Michael, thank you very much for that. That's great talking to you. And I'm sure Paul got a lot of value out of that as well.
My pleasure, Kevin.